Hello everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations, and you're with Simon today. And we're going to be looking at the full moon in Sagittarius. And this is for the 17th of June, 2019. So, the embodiment of a fresh perspective. This was a really fun full moon to dive into, to be honest. Myself and Jen spent some time really exploring, the undercurrents of the specific location of where the planets are, and we really had a cool conversation around how and what it could potentially mean for us. So I'm really excited to share those insights with you today, and just really hold the opportunity for another moon message to provide us with nourishment and depth, and I suppose on some level a nurturance of our souls. That seems to be pretty lacking in the world at the moment, even though there are many different sort of arenas in life where we can find connection and depth. There's not necessarily a full collective awakening of this being something that is deeply essential, you know? And I think that Sagittarius as an archetype speaks volumes to this. So I really want to jump into that as well. Okay, well then let's do that. So, the imagery speaks to this full moon for us in a very big way, to be honest. And I feel that the polarity that could potentially exist with this full moon is very real. The girl that's sitting over here with this moon that she's holding in her hands, and she's sort of like looking up to the sky, and the moon is dissipating into the ether. It reveals to us, at least internally, this potential for our lives to, through this very intense shift that we're currently dealing with. And I'm sure that most of you right now can really feel the internal shifts that are taking place for you, whether they be positive, in the sense that it's something that you've been wanting and now you're seeing things from a fresh perspective, or that they're being kind of forced on you and you're struggling to navigate through this shift and change in a way where the fresh perspective is not necessarily fully available to you. Either way, there is clearly a very deep unconscious shift that's occurring for us at a collective level as well. But ultimately, the perspective that I want to provide us with today is the relationship that this little girl has to not only her vision to look into the sky, and on one level to observe her observation into the sky, her seeking into the sky as a Sagittarius component. Wherever you have Sagittarius in your charts, if you've got that emphasized by planets, or if you've got planets in your ninth house, this is a theme of exploration. It's a theme of looking beyond the small details and not necessarily overlooking the details, even though that is a shadow aspect of the sign. It's about broadening one's horizons, and in this image over here, what I want to portray is our capacity to observe this night sky, right? And you can even do this as a practical exercise for this full moon, is to just go outside and gaze at the sky, gaze at the stars, and attempt to do this in some way, shape, or form, and observe what you feel intuitively, inwardly. Use the sky as the canvas, as a reflection for your own inner imagination. And so imagination is a very sort of big part of this full moon, because the fresh perspective can come from a place where we revisit maybe the dreams that we've laid to rest because of life circumstances that have come our way, and we've felt struggled in those situations, and we've kind of had to put our dreams aside for a while, and we've really had to integrate a level of patience, I suppose, even though it may have not felt like that at the time, or even now if you've had to lay your dreams aside for a while. But always looking up at the sky and looking up at or into the distance and feeling the potential and maybe even the hope for what it means to take your light, which is your inner creativity, your potential, your sense of encoded meaning that you place into the world that originates from a deep place within inside of yourself. And how does that get released into the ether? How does that get released into the cosmos? And I think this full moon in Sagittarius really speaks to not only the road that we have to travel to experience something like this, but also the sensitivity that in our lives we do need that. We do need that meaning. And I think that in the world that we live in today, it can be very easy to lose or have that sense of meaning repressed or overwhelmed by all of the other sort of madness things that are going on in the world at the moment. And it does really depend on the perspective that you have, I suppose, and how you're looking at it. And do you question your perspective on it and ask yourself, where may I be perceiving this situation, and how am I, and where am I perceiving it? What judgments do I have on it, as an example? And so in that experience, do I perceive the potential or the meaning in the experience in its fullness, or am I limited in my own categorization and only picking up small aspects of it, And so the embodiment of a fresh perspective is, I feel, a very profound need at this time as we shift through this collective transition of energies, and the way that the collective energies are shaping our perception of life, and what type of life we're actually moving through. What phase are we moving through? What time period are we moving through? And I think that with the Pluto and Libra generation, who have their Neptunes in Sagittarius, of course Jupiter and this moon will land somewhere, whether it be after your Neptune or it's landing on your Neptune, depending on when you're born. But the nodes of the moon and also Mars would be also squaring your natal Pluto, or has already squared your natal Pluto, or is going to square your natal Pluto. So this full moon, I think, speaks volumes to the Pluto Libras. This is born 1973 and 1984, where you're trying to find the meaning in your own life, like you're exploring your own inner navigation system. And for the vast majority of your life, you've spent a lot of time really involved in the others and never really got the opportunity to fully know what your own is. So there's some really profound shifts that are occurring for you in that generational experience. The Pluto in Virgos, this full moon is squaring potentially your natal Uranus and your natal Pluto as well. And of course, that's going to bring to you some really, really deep soul material. And then you've got the Pluto and Sagittariuses, who have got, of course, their natal Plutos sitting here as well. And so they're even having an evolutionary shift in their storyline take place. And it's pretty fascinating to me in terms of watching the way that this new moon or this full moon and the new moon, and the way that the energies at the moment are reshaping our perception, and are also supporting the integration of the next generation into the collective awareness, which is the Pluto and Sagittariuses, and what their role is. And one of the things that I found really fascinating was a big part of the story today, and that is maturation, growing into maturation, emotional maturation. And how that is a necessity or a requirement to know what meaning is for you in life, right? And to know what it means to cultivate this vision that this girl is looking at, and she's full of hope, she's full of potential, she's full of the opportunity to expand her horizons and to share her ideas and meanings into the world. And of course, this is a huge part of the Sagittarius symbolism, right? So this full moon has wonderful layers to it. And, you know, if we can keep those, if we can see those layers and we can embody the fresh perspective that is being presented to us at the moment, who knows what new horizons lie on the outskirts or on the next bend for you within your life. So let me jump onto our chart and have a look at what's available to us right now. And that's the chart at the moment for the new moon, or should I say full moon, sorry. And as you can see in the symbolism over here with my cursor, let me just get a, there we go, over there. Here's Jupiter sitting at 18 degrees at the moment, and here's the moon. And I find this really interesting that, you know, while you're watching this video, because this will be before the full moon, and if you've watched it afterwards, obviously this won't apply exactly, but the moon itself won't actually, when you're watching this, have crossed Jupiter. So before this full moon takes place, the moon will cross Jupiter, which gives a very significant element to this full moon. It provides us with a message here that's seemingly clear. The relationship between these two reveals that Jupiter is very important in this full moon. So the moon will carry a symbolism of Jupiter. And so that's important to note, is that the moon will cross over the south node of Uranus, and you'll see that in this video I have brought the nodes of the outer planets here as well, right? Okay, so Jupiter and Saturn are here as well, but I've put in the planetary nodes. And the planetary nodes are very important when it comes to contacts, like when we have when we have transits to these planetary nodes, and you can see there's quite a lot. So I've added it in for a very specific reason, because when you see big, huge collective shifts take place in our awareness, you're guaranteed to see the planetary nodes activated, because this is the undercurrent. This is like the deeper embedment of the energies that materialize into our psyche and that then become the manifestation of the reality in which we interact with. So this is not just individual, although we as individuals are interfacing with this deeper, larger undercurrent. So this is a huge time for us. This is a huge momentum, and I think that you can see clearly with a lot of the symbols here at the moment in Cancer that the magnitude of what is occurring for us is not just something silly, but something really, really profound. And of course, it would be natural to understand that this shift that is occurring for us at a deep primordial level has a lot to do with our meaning that we have in life. And of course, I'll go deeper into it when I do when I share the specific aspects of these planetary symbols. So as I said, you've got these planetary nodes over here, and the moon will cross this, right? And then it will hit Jupiter, and then it will make the opposition to the sun. All while the sun would have moved over the north node of Uranus, and would have progressively moved continuously up until this point. So it already carries within it subtle imprinting of the Uranus nodal axis. Okay, now there's just a profound amount of information to share about, you know, what the planetary nodes of Uranus are and Pluto and stuff, but that's something that I think is too much to grasp in this conversation. So I'm not going to go too deep into it, but just know that this is an energy that mainly focuses on the collective's perception of reality and how we find meaning in our existence, and what does individuality have to do with our faith or our sense of perception. And you can see this very, very well in our collective, because we have things like the political sphere on the left and the political sphere on the right, and both people or both polarities are observing the other and saying, well, mine's right and you should do this and you should do that. And technically and very much when it comes to balance, it's not the truth that one extreme is better than the other. They're just polarities of a deeper construct. So the Uranus nodal axis reflects the ongoing evolutionary necessity to find the balancing point between two extremes, and specifically speaking to the nature of how we perceive those two realities, and obviously the meaning in each of them, right? And we're all encoded in this. Like if you had to have a little survey of values and views that you subscribed to, you would notice that your perception would be swayed left or right depending on the nature of your, biological makeup and social conditioning and beliefs and internalized ideals about what you think is right and wrong, etc. And so that is a way to actually objectify this deeper undercurrent that is existing with the nodes of Uranus. So you can see this is a sensitive point. So, observing your own subjective perception of reality during this time will render profound insight, because it is something that has heightened sensitivity. I think that would be the summarized version of the moon and the sun's movement over the Uranian nodes. Okay, so that's that. And then you can see here again that we've also got Saturn on top of Pluto's south node, Jupiter over here, and then you've got here as well, look, Mercury sitting at 19 degrees. It's literally conjunct in alignment with Pluto's nodal axis. Mars is on Saturn's north node, and there's Saturn and Pluto hanging out together, So there's a lot of energy, a lot of activation on the collective nodal axis of Cancer Capricorn. And again, such a profound quantity of information to digest that it's not possible to fully grasp and comprehend the nature of what that means. But maybe at some point I'll do a presentation on validating and bringing to light that. I'm sure some of you would actually enjoy that. But in a very brief way, the Cancer Capricorn axis reflects to us social structures that we as a collective race uphold through the agreement of the values and the traditions and the ideologies that are held within that structure, and then in essence what is held within us. Okay, so again, coming back to, if you have a more right perspective on politics, as an example, more conservative, seeing life through that lens, then the structure of reality and society that you would find yourself existing within would have those ideologies and values and traditions encoded into that structure. And so you would align with that, and that's how you would then sense your understanding of identity. So identity is very much associated with the Cancer Capricorn axis. And you can see in the world today, and I've been observing this really, really intensely. I'm fascinated by it, but using the astrology, I'm also very, very, I believe at least, aware of why these things are playing out. Okay, and what you have here is like the polarity of very profound feminine energy rising to the surface as a necessity for integration. And so what types of personalities manifest themselves with a heightened feminine principle to it? It's more openness. There's the capacity for change and relatability through non-judgment, as an example. But there is also ideologies and beliefs in that process over there that have a very different perspective, say, for instance, on an overdeveloped masculine principle in which conserving and protection and needing things to be more in alignment or logical, and what types of values exist with that. So it's less likely to embrace change. It's less likely to see creativity as a natural function. So creativity being more on the left, and rigidity and keeping things constrained and in structure more on the right. And so when you find the balance between the two, that's very much what the point of the masculine and feminine are trying to do at this point in time at a principle level. I'm not talking political identity structures at a surface level. I'm talking about the polarizations existing at a non human definition level. So these two things are existing here, and they're kind of trying to merge together in a way where they're finding integration and acceptance of each side being valid and yet not lacking in any sense, and both need each other. So in order for in order for light to exist, darkness must exist. And so light appreciates dark and dark appreciates light, because then the polarity of these two exist. And so this is a very profound understanding around the nodal axis at the moment, because we're learning how to find a collective balance between differentiated perspectives and the myriad of ways in which the complexity of our truths can blend together without judgment, without conflict, and with acceptance. And this is at the core of it, like the real deep stuff. This is what I perceive as the nature of what is trying to be rebalanced here. And of course, what naturally arises out of this balancing process is a need to clear out distortion. And of course, this materializes in our more conscious awaking state as our wounds and our inability to accept differentiation, and our struggles around where we've had, say, violence as an example occur to us, and that unresolved anger that exists there, and displaced emotions, and all of these types of things are at the surface. And if we get caught up in that surface stuff, we will never see the deeper underlying current of what is trying to purify itself, essentially, to find that balance and wholeness. And I think that this is going to be a longer thing than just a matter of days or months or years. I think it's a longer process. But to me, the energies at the moment symbolize the necessity for a shift in perspective that supports the progression of the harmonizing of these two energies together, like the fusing of a balanced state of polarity left and right. And if you really want to go deep into this process, you can look at the nodes of Chiron as well, which are sitting there where Uranus is at the moment. So Uranus is sitting at 5 degrees Taurus over there. So the connection of the planet of Cancer Capricorn is identification with truth that is your own authenticity, and the realization of how you can actually nurture that so that it grows into your being. Okay, now that's a broad perspective of this context of what it means to be human. Right, very broad, encompassing perspective. So to take what I'm sharing right now and bring it closer to the specific full moon of Sagittarius, if you observe over here, you can see that there's oppositions between Mars, Mercury, and Saturn and Pluto in the south node, and there is this green line over here, this inconjunct between Jupiter, Moon, and of course the north node. So at the core of it, I see maturity, right? I see growth and maturity. And maturity is something that unfolds over time, and it is also encoded with patience. So the message with the Capricorn signature is patience is the ability to realize that the plan is going to unfold, and it's the witnessing of the unfolding plan, knowing that the end will bring you to the sort of like imagined place that you want it to be. So it's the realization that something will unfold, and it's the realization that you don't need to pressure or push the unfolding process. And then as you witness the unfolding process, you practice patience. And this is Capricorn. It's the maturation and realization of cycles. So that's why this picture over here with the flower is there, which I'll animate for us soon. It's a process of maturation. And how do we embody the realization of our deeper self-image and self-purpose, and what is essential for maturation? Well, it's the North Node in Cancer. It's the Mars Mercury on the North Node in Cancer as it trines Neptune. So that's the whole process of the child looking at the ball or the moon. So the moon being the sense of self-image and the potential that is held within the self-image. And then the trine to Neptune, which is sitting over here, is the capacity to imagine abstractly the potential of what that's going to be. Okay, so it's a projection into the field and the realization that that self-image can be navigated into the higher sort of cosmos and the vastness of it, and for it to be navigated in the cosmos, in life, in a way that is fluid and that is ever shaping and reshaping, and its hope and its meaning. But it can also be easily perceived as despair. It can easily be perceived as the potential for unknowing or confusion or uncertainty, and so chaos. And this is another thing that materializes here, is that if we're too deep into the feminine process, chaos exists because it is just, in a sense, the ocean. And feminine in its most primal principle is just the ocean. It's just placid, it's existing, it has no intention, it's just being. And it's a very, very profound place to be, because it's still, it has no motivation, it has no intention, it's just being. And then what arises out of that is the potential for awareness, which is the masculine principle arising out of it. That is the polarity spectrum. So when there is too much chaos, there is a necessity for bringing structure in place to mold it so that we can grasp and digest a aspect of reality. And it's finding this balance between the two. And so for this trine to Neptune, we can be lost in the confusion of infinite potential, or we can be very specific and use our vision, which is the Jupiter archetype, which is the intuitive knowing sense. It's our guidance system to navigate us on a specific fractal. And then what we see in that specific fractal becomes the path of illumination. So we're not actually searching for meaning in an existential way, but we're actually cultivating the emergence of meaning in our lives. And we do that by the Cancer North Node experience, which is letting go of a pre-existing idea of what you perceive it to be, okay, and moving into the grounding and the roots and the nourishment that is held within the water. So you don't seek for meaning out there in the higher degrees of the cosmos, but you search for meaning inwardly by going into the roots of your own nature. And so for a lot of us, unfortunately, home and tradition and connection and bonding to the immediate environment and family have been like really, really disrupted because of events like trauma or dysfunctional family dynamics, or where there hasn't been the unresolved emotional complexes between mom and dad, and then therefore children, that hasn't been worked through. And so there's a lot of sadness there, and there's a lot of pain there, and a lot of like disassociation from the connection to tradition and the connection to establishing patterns of bonding between people as a way to nourish emotional sensitivity. And I think that the world has a lot of this at the moment that's lacking. And this is the polarity. This is like the extreme of the masculine archetype in its most extreme form, is the inability to access the emotional center, the feminine principle, in that way. And so therefore it becomes stoic, or it becomes deeply emotionally detached and unforgiving and relentless, and using its potential and its energy for destructive purposes. So the masculine form of potential becomes destructive. It turns in on itself because it can't perceive its own vulnerability, or that it does perceive its own vulnerability, and then uses a defense mechanism to protect itself from its insecurities and fears. So the fear itself within this kind of extended masculine principle, where we are lacking the ground, keeps us in a perpetual cycle of scarcity, as an example, or the necessity for needing more than what we have because of a fear of loss, on one level, or a fear of not being able to survive. Many different very real things that we have actually as a human species experienced during a long period of time. So the grounding potential, the nourishing, pulling yourself into your roots, and really getting connected with what nourishes you at the deepest level, because it's from there that the water gets soaked up, right? The roots soak up the water from the earth, and that nourishes the potential for energy to rise to the surface and then bloom into the expansion of awareness. So awareness in itself is a masculine trait, and then the feminine principle in itself is just that holding, solidifying principle that allows stability to be in play. So the holding structure. This is the Saturn archetype. So really pulling into the ground and coming from your roots up, pulling in from your roots up, and getting in contact with your roots. But now, of course, as I said, there's a lot of trauma there. There's a lot of these, and we've got to distangle that. We've got to get into that emotional place and really rework the wiring, or in a sense, the way that the roots have been placed in the ground. And if you haven't had them, you've got to allow the Capricorn archetype to integrate through discipline into the ground. You've got to, through patience, watch the unfolding process occur for you, right? Because the energy is essentially moving in two directions, one into the ground and one out into the open. That is what growth is. It's energy expanding in two different directions, and both of them support and nourish each other. And that's another sort of wisdom that is coming through this Cancer Capricorn axis at the moment. But you need hope, you need vision, you need potential, you need the fresh perspective in order for you to nourish the roots that are here to sustain your growth, right? So the potential for as the child is looking into the sky. And it's going into that emotional reality. So I think I've already covered that in a profound way. And then when you look at the Capricorn energy over here, coming back deeper into this, as I said, it's right now, in order for the fresh perspective to be embraced, you've got to let go of a pre-existing structure that you had, that you perceived as essential, but now at this point in time is blocking you. So I love the story over here. It was actually really, really profound. And it was that if a person is in a room and the door is unlocked, okay, the person can still be stuck in that door, in that room, and can't get out, even if the door's unlocked. And why is that the case? Well, if his perception of the door opening, okay, is to push the door, but the door can't open if you push it, it only opens if you pull it, then he's forever stuck, or this person's forever stuck, because he's pushing the door open, and the door can't open by being pushed, it has to be opened by being pulled. And so it's like the perspective can block you from accessing freedom because of the nature of how you perceive it. And this was just phenomenal. It was just like such a profound insight, because it was like, it really asks you to see how you could be pushing, and not necessarily because of the door, but pushing life to manifest the freedom you seek. And yet the freedom that is available to you in all potential is available when you see it from a different point of view. And so it's the embodiment of the fresh perspective that can actually remove the limitations that are holding you from freedom, which is literally on the other side of the door. And that's how I see the Neptune trine, the North Node and Mercury and Mars again. It's like your assertion, your capacity to be in flow and to move, it really does depend on how you perceive it in that sense. And so it's a constant observation of your perceptions that needs to be under like a microscope, so that you can allow yourself to not be always blocked by your own perceptions. It was really, really profound in that sense, and I liked it so much. And I want to use this picture over here because nature always seems to provide such profound insight into things, because, and let me just play it again because it's obviously stopped, and that was that, like a tree, an example. I couldn't actually get a tree that was doing this, so this is going to suffice. But a tree, just like I've spoken to with lots of clients and stuff, a tree you never ever see plants and trees and stuff consult other trees for um, life purpose and direction. Because inherently encoded within the tree itself is a natural blueprint, and this is Uranus. So, what does it mean to then nurture a perspective that supports the awakening of your own potential? And it is the fact that you are life, and life has this way of unfolding inside of you. So you can come into contact with the realization of this unfolding process by realizing that, well, patience, for one, is a very profound thing, because it, as we've spoken about, it speaks to that everything has a cycle, right? So the the flower over here can't bud like it is right now if the stalk isn't there, and so the stalk needs to grow. So there are steps in the individuation process that must be moved through to support the next, to put a structure in place to support the next phase. And that, just like with everything in life, everything emerges into its full bloom and then recedes back into the ocean. And so this would be the perception of the flowering of potential, the masculine principle. But as it reaches its point of heightened perception or realization, it's 12 o'clock, as it were, it then starts to recede. And this is the dying process, right? Here it comes now. This is the dying process. This is the feminine principle. Everything gets absorbed back into the knowing field, as it were. And from that arises another cycle. And this is who we are. And this is what we are. We're a constant state of energy morphing into full potential and then receding back into the feminine principle of non-duality in that sense. And that process of flowering occurs when we realize that the flower already has this whole entire mechanism encoded in it. And so that realization, when you already internalize it in yourself, you realize that your life is about a series of experiences that transform you. And when you're open to those transformations at the times in which those cycles are present with you, your unfolding process will always awaken. And that is the embodiment of the fresh perspective that you can hold as you awaken to the potential of your purpose. And again, this is the child looking into the gazing into the soul, in the sense, because when she looks at the heavens, what she's really doing is a self-reflected state of her own self, and then in that way releasing that. Okay, all right, peeps, I really hope that you got a lot out of this conversation today, and it brought you some deep insight. I definitely had a lot of fun sharing it. So I hope that your full moon experience is wonderful and amazing, and that this continues to keep providing you with nourishment beyond this actual new moon, this full moon itself. So I'd like to do something for us quickly, just to kind of share with you that Raising Vibrations is a Patreon page, and I encourage you to come check us out and to see what we're doing over there. Links in the description to go over and have a look. And if you feel sort of drawn to supporting our work in that sense, and being able to see what we exchange and how we interact over there, then go check it out, okay? And don't forget that if you're into human design and you want to learn about human design, Jenna's got a course that she's busy starting at the moment. This is, I think, on the 27th, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll put a link in the description as well to study with her. It's a 10-week course. It's pretty awesome in the way that she set it up. And if you are interested in learning astrology, I have a astrology school, full evolutionary astrology school from the beginning to the end, that you can study by yourself. And we have a student group where we practice and do charts, examples, and continue to integrate that work as well. And that's what we do. And if you want to sort of have readings with us, if you want to contact us and say, hey, I want to understand my astrology chart this way or my human design chart this way, then we will also post in the link in the description below all of the connection to those services. All right. Okay, my friends, have an amazing day, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.